everybody, I'm Dr. Christy Taylor, founder of WORxK Solutions and creator of the WORxK Principle. And I am so excited for another episode of the WORxK Solutions Podcast, where today we will be discussing from beliefs to behavior, how organizational thinking shapes culture and performance. And my guest today is Mr. Jason P. Armstrong. He is a retired police chief and National Law Enforcement Hall of Fame inductee with over 2 decades of experience leading in high-stakes environments. He is best known for guiding reform efforts as the police chief in Ferguson, Missouri, following the death of Michael Brown Jr. His award-winning approach to leadership focused on strengthening accountability, culture, and community trust. And today, Armstrong is a sought-after leadership consultant and professional speaker who equips organizations to lead with clarity, confidence, and purpose. He is a best-selling author and trusted national media voice, providing leadership and public safety insights on CNN and ABC. Jason, welcome to the WORxK Solutions Podcast. We are so excited to have you on today's episode. Did I miss anything in your bio that you want to highlight?
No, ma'am. I think you covered it quite well.
You know, I'm so excited because of this topic when we talk about from beliefs to behavior and shaping organizational culture, because you led through a very difficult time. And so I want to start out a little bit learning about your story, but from the context of this question, when you hear the phrase organizational thinking, what does that mean to you in practical terms? And please tell us, because you led through basically crisis management, right?
Absolutely. So when I hear organizational thinking, what that speaks to me is, what can I expect the outcome to be on the average basis of whatever anybody in the organization is going to be faced with? Because, when I hear organizational thinking and what I'm thinking about, it's really kind of what is our auto default as an organization and what people are going to see from us and what they're going to get from us. Now, you hope that that's going to be a positive for what people are going to experience with us. But, we all know organizations, some are better equipped and have better cultures than others. And when we're not seeing those results that we want to see, that's when we know that we have to address some issues internally and work on what our organizational thinking is to make sure ultimately that we're reaching the outcomes that we want to see.
I love what you just said about almost groupthink, right? Organizational thinking, but it's almost the norm of what people are going to expect. So when we talk about this concept of behavioral agility and being able to adapt, I'm sure there's somebody who's done leadership training, leadership development, and all of the experience that you have probably done something like Myers-Briggs or a DISC assessment or some of these personality tests, right? And then you get that person in the room who goes, well, I'm just this way, right? And that can be very difficult when we talk about from an organizational thinking perspective, right? And leadership. Now, based on your experience, Jason, how do collective beliefs inside an organization, you kind of pointed out earlier, right? Inside of an organization shape daily behavior, even when no one says them out loud?
Because people pay attention to what they see. Whether they speak on it or not. And as a leader in the organization, one of the things that I was always reminding my leaders about is that you have to model the behavior of what you want to see from individuals inside the organization at all times, because it could be the smallest thing that you think is insignificant, but somebody's watching, somebody's paying attention, and somebody's taking note that if the leader is moving that way or doing those things, then that gives me an excuse, or that gives me the leeway to do the same. And when you have individuals doing that inside your organization, it's almost like the snowball effect it just continues to spread and spread. And before you know it, you have a culture in the organization that is not conducive to what you're trying to accomplish. And to speak to, what you were talking about as far as the different tools and assessments that are out there. So I'm certified in the EQI 2.0 testing. And what I like about that one is the things that it analyzes are broken down as skills. And so even if you're having a conversation after going through their results from taking the EQI testing, you're talking about skills. And so even if somebody says, well, that's just how I am, well, that's fine, because we're talking about a skill. We're not talking about, something that you've been diagnosed with.
Right.
We're talking about a skill, and all skills can be worked on, all skills can be improved if you have a commitment to improving them. And that's what we focus on in doing that. And that's why I like that one in particular, because you're able to counter, some of the excuses that people, give you. Well, I'm just wired this way, or I'm just like this. Because, when you go through that certification, you have to go through the testing yourself. And I know I had some of those excuses of, well, being a police chief or being this, like I had to move this way. And no, they don't let you off the hook with that. Is yes, you may have felt as though you needed to move this way, but there are also additional things that you could do that you can add to your tool belt, if you will, that will sharpen your skills and give you more options available to you and how you navigate whatever's in front of you, to where, you're contributing more to what is positive in that space versus just being okay with it being negative and approaching it like it's something negative all the time.
Yeah, I really love what you said. I think that really sums up what behavior agility is, behavior modification, whatever term we want to call it or coin it, right? We have to be adaptable. And one of the things from a personality standpoint is, even when we're doing these assessments, and I don't want to get stuck on that, but I just want to point out that, like, if you've done something like Myers-Briggs or whatever, we're a little bit of everything, right? So there's a little bit of us. And if you're a little bit of everything, even if you have a dominant thing, you can change. But it's about understanding and recognizing from a leadership perspective, we have to be adaptable and flexible. And I also want to go back to your point, because I was just talking about this in the previous with the previous podcast I recorded, where we talked about leaders who say, do as I say, which is something, of course, your parents say growing up, but not as I do, right? And so you went right to the point on that when we talk about emulating behavior and being able to ensure that we're modeling it. Both of us come from service-oriented type roles, right? Policing, education, me serving in the military. People are always going to be looking at you. But I think that no matter what where you're serving, okay, you could be a general manager at McDonald's. People are looking at you from a leadership standpoint, and so you do need to be modeling behavior. So, based on some of the experiences that you had, Jason, and the roles that you play, what do you find as some of the most what are some common unspoken beliefs that you see in workplaces that quietly limit performance?
I would say probably at the top of that list, if not number one, but close to number one, is the belief that because we've always done it this way, this is the right way to do it. And having to lead reform efforts in public safety and dealing with something that, got the nation's attention, if not the world's attention, with the incident that happened in Ferguson back in 2014. Coming into that organization, there was a mandate of all of the reforms that had to be done. And it's non-negotiable that you have to get these things done. It's legally obligated at this point. And trying to work through and navigate that, with people who, were used to and accustomed to doing things a certain kind of way, to where when I arrived, and it happened very quickly, that, we really had to reset the tone of the organization, that there's a new leader here. And so the way of doing things, in the past, that it has shifted. And it's not saying that everything was wrong that was being done in the past, but it's just, I'm a different person in the seat right now, and I may have a different lens on what it takes for us to be successful here. And that's, there's going to be some growing pains that are attached to that. And one thing that is not an acceptable answer for me is, when I ask, why are we doing this, or how do we get here, is because we've always done it this way, because that's often the answer that you're going to get. Another thing that I think, really, really challenges organizations is when you have younger people in an organization. When I say younger people, I'm not talking about age. I'm talking about their time in the organization. So people that have not been with an organization for, a long period of time, and them not feeling as though their voice is valued in the organization, where they may have some good ideas, they may have some good suggestions of things that could help the organization at large, but they don't feel as though that they are positioned to speak up or to bring any of that information forward, or if they do, that anybody is going to hold any value to it, because they are newer to the organization. They don't have as much experience with the organization. Those are two of the most critical things that I've seen in organizations that I've led.
I want to stay right here with you for a moment because you said something, Jason, when you talk about coming into an organization, especially coming to an organization that, you came in at a time where you had to lead through crisis, right? But I think from the leadership perspective of any time a leader comes into an organization, I kind of just want you to share perspective on setting the tone and setting the standard, right? Because there's going to be some groupthink and assumptions that are already there, right? And in an established culture within an organization, and you're being tasked with leading change. One of the things that a really good piece of advice that was given to me recently, because I'm coming into an organization that was new, was like, when you set the standards, even if it's the same policies, right? In my case, hey, it was the same policies, but I was a new leader, right? So I had to still come in, and I still did a whole thing on here's the expectations, even though I didn't do any major policy shifts, maybe a couple things, right? And so I just wanted to hear your perspective on when you are a new leader and you're being placed into an organization at any level, right? About the importance of setting those standards, or really, how do you build those connections, but still set that standard in that tone.
Yeah, and you hit it right on the head. That from the outset, it is setting the expectation. And one thing that I had to be crystal clear in my communication when I came into an organization as the new chief is what my expectations were. Now, you're not able to cover every single thing that is going to come up, at the very beginning. You want to hit the most critical things at the very beginning and help people understand just kind of how you view things and what is your take on how you expect people to behave and what you expect them to do. And it's one of those things, at least in my profession, that it's never going to take long for situations to reveal themselves that you have to take action on, or that you have to address. I remember when I came into Ferguson as the new chief there, something happened my first day that I had to send a very clear message to the organization about how the expectations had changed with me sitting in the chief seat now. My third day there, something else happened where I had to send another message to the organization. So it didn't take long at all. Now, I wasn't looking to come into the organization and make a big splash in that way. And that's one of the things that, when I coach, aspiring leaders now, that I try to help them understand is you can have this big game plan and the map of what you want this to look like. You are going to play the hand that you are dealt. And in my case, I was dealt the hand the first week that I was there, the first 3 days that I was there, where I had to make some very tough decisions, and I had to address some very serious things that really reverberated through the organization, where people were looking like, wow, like this is really different with this new chief that we have in here. And so although that wasn't my aim and my goal at the outset, but you have to be confident in your ability to lead and know that what you're doing is going to set the tone for what your experience is going to be in that organization or that team, wherever it may be, that you're crystal clear on where it is that you're trying to go. The title of my book is I'm Done Here. Create lasting impact by leading with intentionality. And the whole premise behind I'm Done Here is every time that I came into a new leadership role, I was looking at what do I want this to look like when I'm done in this role.
I love it. It's kind of that begin with the end in mind.
Exactly.
Right?
Not knowing how long I'm going to be here or any of that, but what do I want this to look like and what does success look like at the end of this? And once I really, frame out what that looks like, and I have a really good picture and a foundation for what the end looks like, then I work back from there. And so everything that I'm doing or what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to build and how I'm trying to help people understand, and for me to get the buy-in from the people in the community or inside the organization that I need to get from them, to where they understand, like, the reason that I'm doing all of this or that we are doing this is because we're trying to get here. And if we do it the right way, when I'm done here and I leave, it's not going to matter that I'm gone, because we have set such a great foundation of the culture of this organization that whoever comes in a leadership seat after me is going to be positioned for success and for continued progress and to take it to the next level. Because if you're intentional about what it is that you're building, it's not about the person that is sitting in the seat at the time that you're building it. you want to see things 2 years, 10 years after you're gone from that position, still growing and still flourishing, because that lets you know that you did a good job of setting a good foundation and helping things grow from there. And so if you as the individual start from the lens of, when I'm done here, this is what I want this to look like, and I can look back on it and be proud of what I've done here, then that's a good way to go about when you're leading change or you're leading reforms or whatever it is that you're trying to tackle, in the role that you have, where you really understand it's not about you as the individual, it's about the greater good, whether that's the organization, the community, or whatever space you find yourself in.
I think this is a great segue into the next question, because you came in and you did work. This is highly in the news, highly politicized. But I just want to talk about, in some of your other experiences in the context of this question, right? Because this also would apply to the average everyday person who's coming in, and that you're going to be tasked with leading change, right? And you were able to do it in a very dynamic way with something that was front and center. But from a very everyday experience and in all of the things that you've done in your career, when you go into a situation as a leader, how can you identify the thinking patterns that are the driving culture of that organization beneath the surface, right? Because it's to your point of saying that every leader goes in with the game plan. Oh, I'm going to do a 90-day to a 30-day listening tour. Yeah. Every college president I've ever dealt with in my higher education career, I'm going to do a 30-day listening tour. The first 90 days, here's what I'm going to do. All the stuff that they teach you in class. But, sometimes you get to hear and you dealt, right? But how do you go about being able to, yes, you're observing, but what patterns are you looking for, right? How are you going about that process of identifying, like, these are the things I need to change?
So, part of it is having conversations with people. And for me, coming in as a police chief, if I call somebody into my office to have a conversation with them, like, they are already on edge, because nobody wants to come to the chief office to talk about anything. Most people associate the chief's office with getting in trouble or getting fired, right? But for me, coming into an organization from the outside, coming into a new community, that I'm not originally from, and all of those things, there's a lot that I have to learn. And I'm never dismissive of that part of the process. Like, that is a very critical part of the process, in coming in and getting educated on as much as you can get educated on about the organization, about the people there, and some of the things, the issues and the challenges that they're dealing with. And in the course of getting educated on things, I am being a very, observant, studious listener, and I'm taking notes and I'm taking stock at what I see from people. And I'm going to, like, early on, and to your point, like, I never put out one of those 100-day plans, because I never bought into that. Because my philosophy is, you're bringing me into this organization from the outside because you recognize that I possess something that is not currently there. And so there's something that you need me to address, or that you need me to try to have an impact on, that you don't see the individuals inside the organization right now being able to accomplish that, right? And so me coming in and managing expectations, I would always tell people, whether it was the elected officials or people in the community or what have you, do you want it done right, or do you want it done fast? Because I can accomplish both, but they look very differently.
Fast is a Band-Aid, right? Yeah. Fast can be a Band-Aid.
They look very differently. And I was always arguing for, you have to give me time to do this, because it has to be done the right way. There are no shortcuts in driving sustainable, positive change. I can come in, I can change a whole bunch of stuff, and I can stand up and hold a press conference and say, look at all the things that I've changed. But if the things that I change don't equate to positive outcomes and results, then I haven't done anything. All I did was change things just for the sake of being able to say that I changed things.
Just to say you did it. And I think that part of that too is when you talk about thinking about the legacy and things you want to leave behind, because I'm sure that we've all encountered leaders like that, right? Where it's like, okay, you begin with the end in mind, but they really are they want to move fast because they're ready to move to the next thing. But then it's not sustainable what you create. And also we do have to consider organizational cultures when we go into a situation, right? And so you do want to be a champion. You want to understand the people that you're working with who you can bring along with you, who you might have to let go or stay behind, right? You want to develop those relationships and maximize that, because if you just start implementing the change, you're going to be kind of like a dictator, right? But
to that very point, one of the things that I was intentional about, and I would talk to people, is I understood, me as the leader, if I'm standing and I'm looking out into the horizon about where we're going, I need an entire organization behind me moving in the same direction for us to get there. Also, in that same vein, is I know that everybody's not going to be standing right behind me, chomping at the bit to move forward. Some people are going to be right behind me and ready to go. Some people are going to be further back, just kind of looking, observing. I don't know if I want to go with this guy or not. Some people are going to be all the way lagging behind, moving at a snail's pace because they don't want me there. They do not align with my thoughts and views of the organization, and they didn't want me there to begin with, and all of the things. And I have to love all of those individuals all the same, because I'm responsible for all of them. And it's my job to do everything in my power to help all of them be successful. Now, I have to exercise more patience with the people that are all the way in the back. But that's where the expectations come into play. Because while I can exercise the patience that I need, and I can make sure that I'm giving you everything and every opportunity to be successful, I'm also going to spell out what I will not tolerate. And I'm okay if you start all the way back there, because you're going to have that in every organization that you go into. I just need to see that you're moving in the same direction. Even if you're moving very slow, I just need to see that you're moving in the same direction. Now, the second that I get with that you're not facing the same direction and moving in the same direction as me and the rest of the organization, and that you've turned around, now we got a problem. And to your point, now, all right, if you don't do an about face immediately, then this may not be the organization for you to work in. But like, that is the ultimate last resort. And that is not what I want to have for people in the organization. I know that the change is going to be challenging for everybody, and it's going to be even more challenging for those individuals that are more resistant. I'm still going to give you every chance and every opportunity to have success here and to get on board with what it is that we're doing. For me to explain till I'm blue in the face of, the benefits and why I think that this is, the right path for us to go in. All right, I'm going to be all ears. If you have some things that can help us, do some things differently that I'm not thinking of, great. I want to empower everybody in the organization to contribute to our overall success, because, no leader can succeed without anybody following them.
I love that. I'm going to ask you one final question, because I was going to ask you some questions about mindset, but you really kind of already touched on it, because the reality of it is, even though we talk about this behavior agility concept and mindset, the reality of it is everybody's not going to be on board with everything we do. So I love what you just said there. The leadership is difficult, right? But the goal of that leader is to keep moving things along when you come into an environment. And so if you're listening to this, just understand, especially if you're a young person and you're in your first leadership role, not everybody's going to have that same buy-in, right? And you will have some people who are in the back, but you still got to move this thing along to get the change that you need. So a lot of the mindset piece, I think you would agree, is you as a leader emulating that. We can discuss, if we had another 30 minutes, hypothetically, what we wish the mindset of the individuals were. But I want to just kind of give you this last question, and then I'm going to give you the floor to be able to talk a little bit about what you're doing and what you're having coming up, okay? And from the context of mindset, I want to just kind of talk about the role of teams, right? And when we talk about identifying thinking patterns that are driving culture, if organizations could change just one belief to improve performance, what would you encourage leaders to examine first?
I would encourage them to examine, what does peer accountability look like in their organization? I just got done giving a keynote talk a little earlier today, and one of the main things that I was focusing on in my talk was the lack of accountability that we see amongst peers. Now, specifically in public safety, we have a chain of command. And so you have a chief and a deputy chief, and you may have, 4 or 5 captains, 7 to 8 lieutenants. So you have those different lines of the organization. And what I found throughout my career, one of the biggest challenges to the success of the organization are those lines not working effectively and efficiently for the organization. And you have cliques that form up, and you got people that don't like each other and all of those things. And what you have is an organization that's out of balance, because things that should be handled at the appropriate level are now being kicked up to be handled at somebody above, because people don't want to take on the accountability and the responsibility for what they get paid to do. And so much of that is driven by peers circumventing and usurping one another, and always going to the person above them to work out the issues of the differences in the organization, as opposed to people that are equals in the organization putting in the work to work on their relationships and figuring out how they address and tackle issues and challenges as a collective, instead of everybody just looking out for their own slice of the pie. That's one of the main things that we see that, really undermines an organization and how an organization can really grow and thrive, because we don't have enough accountability inside the organization, especially amongst peers, because at the peer level, they know so much of what's going on that they don't talk to each other about. Sometimes they're jockeying because they want to have a leg up on the person for the next promotion, and all of the things that we see happen in the organizations, not understanding that how you make yourself look good to the person at the top is that they see that above all, you put the organization and you put others above yourself at times. The more that you can do for others makes you look that much better to the people around you, to where they know that they can trust you with promotions, special assignments, and all of the other things, that a lot of people want and need, to get ahead in their professional life. And so if I had to put one thing on it, I would say peer accountability is probably at the top of that list for me.
All right. Well, Jason, this has been a great interview. And of course, we want to always ask you for that one final piece of advice in the end, but I want to give you the floor for the next 2 to 3 minutes, because we want to know, and if I had your book in hand, I definitely would hold it up, right? But I want to give you the floor to talk a little bit about what you have going on. People will probably see this around the end of February, March. So make sure you tell us what you have going on this year, where people can find you, and we will have Jason's, all of his information in the description box. But we want to know what you're doing right now. You said you just did a speech today when you came in and recorded this podcast. So tell the viewers a little bit about what you have going on and coming up.
Absolutely. So after retiring as a police chief, I started my own consulting firm. And through my firm is Armstrong Consulting, LLC. I do consulting work in public safety primarily, and speaking engagements, professional speaking around the country. One of the things that I speak on the most is crisis management, but then also, organizational leadership and transformation. And how do you take an organization that is struggling and put in a foundation that sets the organization up for lasting success? I'm a #1 best-selling author. The title of my book is I'm Done Here, Create Lasting Impact by Leading with Intentionality. You can find everything about me and what I have going on my website. My website is jasonparmstrong.com. All social media handles are Jason P. Armstrong. And, what I do is just I travel the country. I work with groups, organizations, communities, and how to set up systems that really lead to better outcomes. And that was something that I had the luxury of finding myself in some very difficult situations as a police chief, and having to tackle some very difficult challenges in front of me. And that really gave me the opportunity to learn in that space of some things that lends itself to positive outcomes and positive results. And that's the message that I share around the country now. And so I just do a lot of traveling, doing keynote talks and workshops and trainings and things like that.
Jason, I'm so honored to have you. I was sitting here listening to you, and I was thinking, man, I was a baby professor when the thing in Ferguson happened. And I just remember, my students and I discussing it in class. And so here I am, fast forward all these years later, having the honor of having you on my podcast. I always have to plug WORxK Solutions. So I will say WORxK Solutions, guys, if you haven't checked out the books that we have, we live by the WORK principle. We focus on behavior agility. Each month we're running the 21-day career pivot. And so you can join that career pivot challenge at any time to work on your career branding and focusing on you becoming stronger and better. Now, Jason, I always ask, here at WORxK Solutions, we like to say that we are the prescription for workplace and career success. People get confused because they see the WORxK and don't know how to pronounce it, but it's work. Okay. And that work, that RX is prescription for career success, because my background is in health science. And so I like to ask all my podcast guests, if you could give us one piece of advice that's going to help individuals to write their prescription for career and workplace success, what would that be?
Pour into yourself every day. Pour into yourself every day, because if you do that, then you will build up the confidence to face any challenge that you're going to face. My primary keynote is called Confidence Under Pressure, What's in Your Cup? Because what my experiences have taught me is that when individuals are faced with critical moments, they don't rise to the occasion. They rise to the level of what they poured into themselves, and that was just on display. And so be intentional about what you're pouring into yourself every day. And if you are intentional about that, then the rest will take care of itself, because you will have the confidence that you need to tackle any barrier, any obstacle, any hurdle that is in your way.
Jason, it has been an honor and a privilege to have you on the WORxK Solutions podcast today. And again, whether you tune in on the premiere or a month from now or a year from now, the advice that was given in today's podcast is always timeless. And Jason, we wish you much luck and continued success in the future. Thank you for being a part of today's podcast episode.
No, thank you for having me.
Thank you.